Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to the channel right now. Trump loses challenge to hush money conviction in federal court. Why is this good news for Trump? Because it expedites the Supreme Court looking at the matter. The same exact thing took place in Colorado and in D.C. with the special counsel. Federal courts sided with Colorado. Federal courts sided with Democrats in the special counsel. What happened? It went to the Supreme Court. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. We're almost at 270,000 subscribers, ladies and gentlemen. It's because of you. Tell your friends about this channel. Hit subscribe. Be here in November and beyond. November 5th is going to be a beautiful day for the country. Trump will win again, despite 7 years of the most apoplectic media coverage we've ever seen. Number one, the Supreme Court. Number two, the stock market and the economy. Number three, a distant third, are polls. We'll get to polls in a second. But this expedites the Supreme Court looking at the case. Why? If you scroll down all the way, you get to any sentence could be put on hold while Trump appeals. They're going to try to sentence Trump to actual jail. They want Trump in Rikers Island. They want the photo op. They want to try to convince a certain segment of independent voters. But I mean, honestly, with RFK Jr. backing Trump now, I don't know what if this strategy is even a strategy, but they want to demean and disparage and go after Trump. They want to ruin him as much as possible, and the opposite takes place. Trump is the Obi-Wan Kenobi of politics. The more they go after him, the stronger that he gets. This expedites, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court decision overturning the absurd, unconstitutional, guilty verdict. A state cannot, and I repeat, a state cannot level a federal crime at Trump, a felony, in a federal charge, without the FEC and Department of Justice involved. The Department of Justice was not involved in the hush money case. It dropped the hush money case along with the FEC. Furthermore, he didn't even commit a crime. We know that from former FEC chairman stating he could have paid Stormy with dollar bills. But here, let's listen to his top attorney top lawyer speaking about this.
Day and the Republican nominee for President Donald Trump now being forced to balance multiple legal cases while running a campaign for president. Just yesterday, a federal judge rejecting Trump's request to intervene in his New York paperwork trial, where he is set to be sentenced in just 2 weeks, meaning as of right now, the sentencing will go forward September 18th, and President Trump could literally be in jail as voters head to the polls. Early voting will also be underway on the 18th. Early voting starts on Friday in North Carolina. Meantime, in the January 6th election interference case, this is the new one filed just a week ago by Jack Smith, President Trump announced that he plans to plead not guilty there. Joining me now for more on what this all means, Trump attorney Will Scharf. Great to see you, Will. My first question, I'm wondering if you plan to appeal the decision not to move the Manhattan case to a federal court, and what that means for sentencing, which is scheduled to happen on September 18th, now just 2 weeks away.
Yeah, look, we were very disappointed that Judge Hellerstein, this federal judge in New York, declined to take up this case, basically kicked us back to state court. There are very important federal defenses and federal interests that are implicated by that New York case, and we think the appropriate venue is a federal court. We're going to be examining our options in the next day or two. We are going to continue pushing for that case to be in a federal venue where we believe it belongs. But the key thing is that the timeline here, which you alluded to, it's so absurd that we are being pushed to make important litigation decisions on what's a fundamentally political timeline. We believe, as I think most Americans believe, that this entire campaign of lawfare is designed to achieve the purpose of election interference. There's no reason at all why President Trump should be in courtrooms, should be dealing with these issues, which are in no way, shape, or form time critical in the lead up to one of the most important presidential elections in our nation's history. So this whole process is absurd. We're going to continue seeking to vindicate President Trump's rights at every turn, and we're going to keep on fighting.
Yeah, and it just seems like Jack Smith is a special.
So the Supreme Court, let's say the Supreme Court is likely waiting, almost certainly waiting for him to be sentenced. They don't want to seem that they're partisan because everything they're doing is helping Trump. Why? Because everything Democrats are doing against Trump is unconstitutional. See, it's a very simple reality to understand. Democrats say, oh, the Supreme Court is partisan. No, the courts going after Trump are actually partisan. We know this because what they did was blatantly unconstitutional. The Colorado Supreme Court tried to ban Trump in every state because they defined a rebellion as what happened that day in January, which, of course, Trump was not a part of, and it wasn't a rebellion, and it was a terrible day, but that's an absurd leap of logic to say it was a rebellion. And so Democrats have continually made very absurd leaps of logic. Every time the Supreme Court says, hey, that's a grandiose, absurd leap of logic, and it's unconstitutional, they then say, oh my God, it's a partisan. Trump, Supreme Court? Yeah, the Supreme Court. You're actually doing things that are unconstitutional. Sorry. Your quest to ruin this man is not working. It's only making him stronger. But once the Supreme Court officially takes the case, which I think that they're ready to take the case, it's just a matter of the sentencing. They just need 3 or 4 justices to decide, yeah, well, let's take this case. This expedites the Supreme Court looking at the matter.
Council gone wild in many ways. I'm wondering, and this has fallen off the front page, but I'm wondering if you think there's a chance that in Lower Manhattan, Judge Merchan does something drastic to Donald Trump on sentencing day, like putting him behind bars. You know, at that point, we'll be 40 days out from the election. Could that happen in 2 weeks?
So Judge Merchan has indicated that he's going to give us a decision on our presidential immunity argument on September 16th. That's less than 2 days before sentencing is set to occur. Once we have that decision from Judge Merchan, we would hope to speedily appeal that. And typically, issues of immunity, they're issues that are immediately appealable, and they typically result in a stay of all other proceedings while those issues are hashed out by the appellate courts. That's the process that we've seen play out, for example, in Washington, D.C. That process went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay.
We think a similar process could play out here. But again, Judge Merchan has created an insane situation by not moving sentencing yet. We hope that he does. But by scheduling sentencing less than 2 days after we're set to receive this opinion on presidential immunity, we've set up an issue where we are forced to immediately appeal really within 36 hours.
So the judge is not going to address immunity. The federal judge did not want to address immunity because it's impossible really to know. It's impossible to decipher what was an official and unofficial act. They have never gone after a president in this manner. A president has the right to speak to an attorney, to perform a speech. These are all official acts. The problem is that they say, oh, well, he was in the process of committing a crime. It's not a crime to speak to Michael Cohen. It's certainly not a federal FEC crime. Why? Because the FEC dropped the hush money case. They didn't even think it was an actual crime. So if the FEC didn't think it was a crime, what right does the state of New York have to decide on what a federal statute is? So that's the issue. I mean, the Supreme Court will likely get involved, will get involved if he's sentenced to jail. The good thing for Trump is that if they sentence Trump to jail, the Supreme Court blocks it, reverses it immediately, even if he steps foot like a day in jail. But again, you don't want Trump in jail because God forbid something could take place. God forbid. And so apparently they're going to appeal the judge's decision on immunity, which of course he'll say he has no immunity, but that's not the case.
and seek stays and seek relief from higher courts if he does, in fact, rule against us. That's not fair. That's not a reasonable way to conduct important litigation of this type. So we're hoping that Judge Merchan sees, I guess, the logic of the situation and delays sentencing or moves sentencing, or just eliminates the sentencing date altogether while we litigate these other issues like presidential immunity.
Okay, so just to be clear, so you would appeal 2 days before sentencing, so maybe September 16th, in that 36-hour window, and then hope that kicks sentencing to some point after Election Day, and hope that Donald Trump gets elected, right?
If Judge Merchan were to rule against us on presidential immunity, which, as I said, that ruling is expected on September 16th, we would seek to immediately appeal.
Okay.
And that appellate timeline could take quite a while.
Okay. Well, Sheriff, appreciate you breaking that down for us. Complex, a moving target, certainly, but we appreciate you being.
So Trump is in the driver's seat. Walz and Harris, I do not see winning for a number of reasons, primarily because it was Biden who won his primary. Democrats scoff at that and they laugh at that because their idea of merit, they don't have any, there's no concept of meritocracy, and their idea of democracy is whatever suits them. And they don't have an actual functioning primary, which 10 years ago, 7 years ago would be, 10 years ago would be seen as, unbelievable, an abomination. They would never allow that to happen. Now they just, when they cheated Bernie Sanders in 2016, it was a big deal. Now they cheated Biden even worse, and they just laugh at anyone who would point that out. They're so the hubris and arrogance is unbelievable. Why even have a primary? Just pick your nominee, and Democrats will dutifully vote for the nominee. Why even have this farce of a primary? Okay, these are the same people that pontificate about democracy.
Speaking of former President Donald Trump, happening today, he will return to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for a Fox News town hall tonight at 9 with Sean Hannity.
Yeah, remember the debate was supposed to be tonight, and Kamala said no, and he said yes to a town hall. And Vice President Kamala Harris begins debate camp to prepare in Pittsburgh tomorrow ahead of her first face-to-face matchup with Donald Trump next week.
Mark Meredith is live at the White House. Hey, Mark.
Lauren, Steve, Ainsley, and Brian, good morning. Friends, we are less than a week out for the first and potentially only presidential debate of these two candidates this cycle. And while they will be taking time to prepare right now, they're also reaching out to voters in swing states. Later today, Vice President Harris, she will be in New Hampshire talking about her economic plans for small businesses. Former President Trump, he'll be taking questions here on Fox. The latest prediction from data guru Nate Silver shows Trump still with a sizable advantage in the electoral contest with the 56% chance of winning, the highest he's seen since late July. Trump also leading.
Now, I want you to think about this for a second. Trump has a 56% chance of winning. Harris has a 43% chance. Now, that's with being indicted with 90 criminal charges. The American people know very well it's a partisan effort by Democrats. It is an overt attempt at going after your direct political rival. Nobody believes that Trump is a criminal. If you're the Democrat, you're like, oh, he's a criminal, and then you'll defend Hunter's laptop forever, or Clinton's servers, or a whole bunch of criminality. But Trump, because you're told that he paid Stormy, that was a big crime. No, it wasn't. Even former FEC chairman stated it wasn't. His speech wasn't a crime either that day in January. Terrible day, but it wasn't a crime at all. He had nothing to do. Trump had literally nothing to do with the criminality that day. Nothing. But again, absurd leaps of logic. Democrats have taken a playbook from the early 2000 Republicans, and we'll see a stock market collapse just like we saw before 2008. Okay, President Obama winning in 2008 and Trump winning in 24. Democrats will do the same thing to the Democratic Party as Republicans to the Republican Party. Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld destroyed the Republican Party in 2008. Destroyed it with never-ending military conflict and a stock market collapse. The same type of thing is taking place right now.
July. Trump also leading with Hispanic voters on an interesting issue on handling immigration. Of course, an issue that is central to this election cycle. Still, Harris surrogates say it's important for her not to pivot too much away from her base.
I think it's as simple as letting Kamala be Kamala. She has her own views. We are all different, even if we've been a part of an administration, even if we're in the same political parties. We all have different nuances, different ways that we were raised, different things that we feel more passionately about. I think it could even be just an issue of, say, focus.
One word that we've heard so much about the last couple of weeks is momentum. The Harris campaign, Democrats insist they have it. There's a new memo out from Trump world insisting they've got the real momentum. They point to support from people like Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, Tulsi Gabbard, as well as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to show that they have a broader coalition of people that may appeal to voters in these swing states. So everybody fighting for that momentum. Right. Steve Ainsley, Brian, and Lawrence, back to you guys.
And we'll see what happens.
Mark.
Thanks, Mark. We'll see what happens after the debate, because it could be the one and only debate. That's what it looks like now. And it looks like Philippe Brains has decided to, or has been asked to help out Kamala Harris to prepare. It looks like she's going to go to debate camp, but she's still going to do some appearances in Pennsylvania, unlike Joe Biden, who just salted himself away for 2 weeks, and that was a disaster. And the question is, will Joe Biden, this was a question yesterday, will Joe Biden be helping out? Why would you want the worst debater ever to help out? And he destroyed his whole career last time he helped out. And someone's got to stand up on the Democratic side and tell Joe Biden to bow out. He talked more than Kamala.
They literally ousted Biden after a debate, and now they want his debate expertise. Only the public relations apparatus of the Democratic Party would ask Biden for help on anything.
Harris. Nobody wants to see him. The union vote's going to go Democrat anyway. No one wants to see him on the campaign trail. He's making less sense than ever. His anecdotes go on forever, none of which are based on fact. So to me, James Carville says you have to turn the page from the Biden administration. What the Trump people have to do is make sure she stays with the Biden administration.
The problem is her record is the Biden administration's record. Her record as a senator was even more left than Bernie Sanders. So it's hard for her to change her positions and walk away. I know. Especially with the voters that are informed.
It's hard to be the change the page candidate when you were part of that book,
Exactly.
Ultimately. So it's one other thing Lucas just mentioned, RFK Jr. He did endorse Donald Trump about 10 days ago. And since then, he has been trying to get off the ballot in all these battleground states. Yesterday, he had sued in Michigan to get his name off the ballot. In Michigan, a judge dismissed the case. So his name is going to continue on the ballot in that swing state.
All right. Multiple suspects with possible.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian.
So let's really quickly talk about price controls, which is another reason Trump will win. 95% chance he'll win because of these price control policies.
Wouldn't the profit margin be 30% instead of 1.2%? I mean, this whole thing is absurd. The Washington Post directly cited communism about this in its story, saying it's hard to exaggerate how bad this is, that it's going to lead to shortages, black markets, and hoarding. Let's bring in, for his reaction, former chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett. Kevin, always wonderful to see you, sir. When you saw this plan, what was your reaction?
Honestly, I was horrified. This is incredibly chilling. A lot of the sort of reasonable Democratic economists, like my good friend Jason Furman, are out there saying, well, they're not really going to do it. But if you look at Kamala Harris's record, she's for Medicare for all, so you can't have your health insurance. She wants everybody to have a guaranteed job. She's got all these socialist policies that she's been walking back over the last couple of weeks. And now they come out, now you know why they don't let her speak in public. She comes out with the craziest, silliest, and most economically illiterate proposal in the history of presidential politics. And honestly, she wants the government to set prices, and she really wants them to. That's the chilling thing. If she becomes president, this is going to be policy. You're going to go to the grocery store, and it won't be there, or if it is there, the shelves will be empty. That's what happens when the government sets prices. I actually wrote a chapter in the economic report of the president, or my staff did, when I was in the White House, that showed that when the government starts setting food prices, then that's when people start having famines and stuff, because the people who produce food can't afford to do so because the government pays them less than the cost. It's just terrible.
I mean, it's being called remarkably, absurdly idiotic, breathtakingly idiotic. And it took her 4 years to come up with this. I mean, this is after her running mate, Tim Walz, called socialism, quote, neighborliness. You know, she's copying Senator Elizabeth Warren, you know, Bernie Sanders. Kevin, the irony today is grocery giant Kroger just promised to cut prices by $1 billion after its merger with Albertsons. Let me back up. Let's watch Catherine Rampell of the Washington Post on this and listen to former President Trump. Watch this.
What that
something that's going to take the far left people and make sure that they're ready to vote for her. No, this is a serious proposal. In fact, while she's out there talking about this price gouging, she's also bragging about the price setting that the government has done in the prescription drug space. And my colleague Thomas Phillipson wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal a few days ago that showed that because of the price fixing of the Biden-Harris administration, then millions of seniors are going to lose their drug benefits. You could go through that article and see about how that works. But she's bragging about having fixed other prices, and she's, copying a bill that wants to fix every price.
Well, you know, she wasn't picked by Democrat primary voters, so this is what the party is stuck with: absolute abject stupidity. Kevin, if you could please just stay with us for just a bit more. We got to get to this story. Okay, coming up next, turning to this. Harris also said the government should subsidize housing with even more of your money. Didn't that get the U.S. into the banking and financial crisis, triggering the Great Recession in 2008? More of this same poison? It's so dumb. Grady Trimble standing by live in D.C. with more. Grady.
Hey, Liz. Vice President Harris says this plan she laid out today will help get 3 million homes built in the next 4 years to bring down the cost to buy or rent a home. Here's some of what's in that plan: a tax incentive for building starter homes, a $40 billion fund to spur housing construction.
Mortgage rates are double. I just bring this up every single live stream. Mortgage rates are double. You are not going to get a left-leaning pundit. I'm conservative on most things now. I'm talking about just other pundits or other journalists or other people with opinions on YouTube or whatever platform. If there's a left-leaning Democratic Party, liberal or progressive or far-left person, you will never get them addressing mortgage rates. They will never bring it up. Many of them don't know what a mortgage rate is, what it entails, why it's important. And they will never acknowledge, nor do many understand, why it's so terrible that rates went from 3% or less in 2018 for a mortgage to 7% for a 30-year mortgage. In today, in Biden's America. Okay. They say Trump's America. Yeah, it was a great place. We had record low poverty, record highs in household median income. You could buy a home and you'd have with a mortgage rate of about 3%. Now it's 7%. It's double. It doesn't matter if they put $100 billion fund for housing construction. It's not going to work. Or give $30,000 or $40,000 to people. That'll just make the house $30,000 to $40,000 more expensive.
She wants to cut red tape, stop Wall Street investors from bulk buying homes, and she wants to help with first-time home buyers' down payments.
While we work on the housing shortage, my administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000.
Then sellers will add $25,000 to the price. What does she think that you're going to deceive people who sell their homes? Oh, well, we can't possibly add $25,000 more to the sale price of the home to make up for the $25,000 that people are getting.
To help with the down payment on a new home.
do this.
She says we can do this, but there are questions about whether Harris could if elected, because a lot of these proposals would require congressional approval. They'd also likely lead to more government spending and maybe more inflation, according to some folks, including investor and author David Bahnsen. Here's what he says. Giving people $25,000 to buy a home does not make a home price cheaper. It makes a home cost, well, about $25,000 more. Points out the housing affordability crisis is on the supply side, feeding more demand with increased deficit spending, he says, is the opposite of what this situation calls for. And at his press conference last night, former President Trump said he'll tackle the housing crisis by opening up federal lands to build houses, getting rid of unnecessary regulations, and improving supply chains. And by the way, Liz, the Harris proposal also includes opening up federal land, so maybe some bipartisan support there, although Republicans are blasting the rest of it. Liz.
Thank you, Grady Trimble. Okay, let's welcome to the show the CEO.
So we also have Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders influencing Harris's plans, which these are the worst economic. I used to think they were fantastic, but I almost deceived myself. No, I knew better, but it felt like, in terms of ideology, it was a moral thing to do, to ban fracking, for example. It's highly immoral, because people will, for example, not be able to afford to heat their home in winter and maybe freeze to, you know what.
Welcome back. Attorney and Marine Corps veteran John Deaton declaring victory last night in a three-way Massachusetts Republican primary. He's now set to face off against incumbent Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren this November. Shortly after the race was called, she agreed to participate in 2 October debates against Deaton, but he's challenging Warren to 5 single-issue debates on immigration, the economy, income inequality, foreign wars, and women's productive rights. Joining me now exclusively is the man himself, Massachusetts Senate candidate John Deaton. Congratulations, John. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
No, thank you, Maria, for having me. It's an honor to be on your show, the first person to interview me after the victory.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you for that. I want to get your take on what the plan is now. How do you take on Elizabeth Warren? She's basically in charge of this green climate change agenda. I think she's giving the orders to the administration on who to put in cabinet positions and who to nominate for positions. So how do you win?
Listen, there's no doubt that you're right. Her fingerprints are all over the financial markets going on. And so, listen, Elizabeth Warren, what got me in this race is I saw a poll last year, Maria, that Charlie Baker, former Republican governor, would smoke her if he were running in this race. Beats her by 15 points. Let's remember, she finished third. She couldn't even take second when she ran for president in Massachusetts. Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden beat her. She has a 41% approval rating. She's passed 1 bill in 12 years. And so it's her record that I'm going to win. And people are excited about this race. I have a radical agenda. It's called common sense that we're going to restore to the United States Senate. She's a hyper-partisan person, and the independents in this state are tired of it. What people don't know about Massachusetts, Maria, is 64% of the electorate are independents, and they're coming out in swirls to vote for me.
Well, let me get your take on the agenda that she supports. She's been very supportive of Kamala Harris, saying that there's price gouging, that she wants to keep corporations at bay. She wants to make sure to tax them highly, as well as wealthy individuals. So tell me about your economic plans versus hers in Massachusetts.
Listen, I'm the perfect messenger to take her on these issues. You know, she talks about income inequality because it's a political slogan to her. It lives inside my heart. Maria, I come from extreme poverty, a single mother on welfare and food stamps, living in one of the worst neighborhoods in America. I know what it's like to be dependent on the government. I don't want to just give people another $50 or $100 in food stamps and say, I helped you. I want to lift people up. Listen, Elizabeth Warren's great at one thing, fighting against socialist issues in people, right? She's great at fighting against the rich and the wealthy, but that's not the same as fighting for the poor and the middle class. And so, of course, she's out there talking about greedy corporations and price controls and socialistic agendas. I'm a free market capitalist, and I believe that someone like me who's overcome extreme poverty in his life, who's able to lift himself up out of poverty, is the right messenger to lift poor people up and expand the middle class. And I'm looking forward to that comparison.
Yeah, yours is a phenomenal story, and it's certainly so many of us want to emulate. I have a fantastic panel with me this morning, John. I want to bring the panel in. Trisha, Mahek, give us your take on what you're hearing here, because there's not much time left to get Americans to understand what John Deaton is saying, right? When do mail-in ballots go out, Trisha?
For North Carolina, they go out on September 6th, but of course the first presidential debate isn't even until the 10th. But John, I really want to hear, what are independent voters, what are these swing voters in Massachusetts telling you? What do they want out of you, and what do they want out of the candidates?
What they want is common sense. Listen, illegal immigration and the migrant crisis is bankrupting this state. We spent over $1 billion in the last year. We're going to spend over another $1 billion in the next fiscal year. It's literally bankrupting this state while we're experiencing an exodus of people leaving the state. And so there's that issue. That's the number one issue on voters' mind. And then it's the economy. Massachusetts is now the second most expensive state to live for working families. Wow. Regular people are being priced out of the economy. Housing in Massachusetts is more expensive than California now, and people are tired of it and they want change.
Yeah, you know, I did not realize that Massachusetts was the number 2 most expensive. I know that Republicans in Massachusetts are demanding information on the state's alleged $1 billion in secret migrant crisis spending. What is this money being spent on?
So Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, AOC, they don't really believe anything like any of their policies. They don't believe. They don't want to ban fracking. They don't believe in it. They don't believe in a Green New Deal. They're not talking about it. All of the most difficult to implement measures of the Green New Deal, they don't bring up. They said nothing when Biden released strategic petroleum reserves into the country. We can go on and on. Single payer, that's the biggest scam and racket of all time. They don't believe in that at all. They exist to Bernie Sanders, AOC, Elizabeth Warren. They're in Congress to funnel left-leaning votes back into the Democratic Party. It is a racket. That's it, a racket.
Steve Forbes himself. So, Steve, we've talked about this a lot on the show. The number one issue for voters in this election is the economy. And Kamala Harris tells us, basically, I love what Joe Biden's done, but the American people hate it, Steve. But if you do another 4 years of these policies, you're going to get the same results of the last 3.5 years, right?
Well, she's doing modern socialism with a smile. It's very, very upbeat.
It's joyful.
Lenin should have known. Smile, people would accept this kind of nonsense. But she, that interview last night, while on the surface it went smoothly, no surprise, she has settled down and put out a real economic policy. She's sticking with price controls. She's sticking with higher taxes. She's sticking with more regulations. And on things like EVs, where she says, oh, well, we're not going to force you to go to an EV. It's like you can keep your doctor under Obamacare. They're going to make regular cars so expensive by these regulations, they'll do it by fiat rather than by going for Congress and the voters.
The thing, she used the word values. My values have not changed, Steve. So her value is knowingly inflicting financial hardship and suffering on the American people and then telling them, oh, well, you'll get some cheap insulin when you retire. That's in essence what it is, and not owning the devastation that they have wrought on every working man and woman.
Well, this is the amazing thing. These people who parade themselves as tribunes of the people, champions of the downtrodden, end up making their lots worse off. And they ignore the fact, and she wasn't asked about it last night, why was it under Donald Trump household wealth went up? Why did wages go up? Why did lower and middle income people see their wages go up and the gap between the top and the bottom shrink instead of expand? And on inflation, she says, we got it down to 3%, ignoring, as you just heard, that it's still twice as high as it was when Donald Trump left office.
And it's still up 20% since they took.
And inflation was at 9% overall in 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe. Be here tomorrow. I'll have a live stream at about 5 p.m. again tomorrow, and then around 10:30 p.m. in the evening Eastern as well. The Supreme Court and the stock market and the economy. Those two things will cement Trump's victory. Unfortunately, the latter, with the latter, people will lose money, unfortunately. And I don't want that to happen. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, but Biden and Harris, their administration, has led us to a terrible, terrible financial collapse, stock market bubble bursting, stock market crash on, I think sometime in October, probably late October, because of the price controls and because of the the taxes on unrealized capital gains that she wants. Hit subscribe, people. I'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Thank you so much.